I'm just going to sit here and wait. Okay, something's happening. Wow. Oh, okay. That is again. Okay, well. I'll hurry up and wait. Oh. Good thinking. I'm pretty sure I hit that button. There it goes. He's like, well, I just wanted to get the one equation out of there. I was gonna, I was gonna do a problem or two based on the one equation, but we might, huh? Yeah, we'll give it a bit more. We'll just take a nap till it. Come on, man. And I would try my phone to get to the equation quicker, but come on, man. Like, okay, let me touch it again. See, it's definitely not doing anything now. So let's see what happens. Well, maybe I will. Yeah, I just think that maybe it's just the internet. Did it come up? Still, wow. It's really being brought to its knees. Yeah, I think it's the internet. Just not able to handle it. Maybe. This is not what I was looking for either. That I can tell. Well, it's got all these other stuff. Yeah. Ooh, I think I did better there. Okay, I recognize that one. Let's see if I can get the mouse over it and click it. Will it work? Oh my gosh. All right, you can do it. Come on, come on. Well, just recognize that. Okay, so now, I probably could see enough of it right there. Okay, so what I'll do, part of it could be also that the system is slow. Mine, so my laptop is old. It's an i5 and it's several years old. Uh, so here's what I want to try to set up. Um, I'm going to kind of try to set up this concept of, let's see, putting a pump in the system. And I made the dang thing too big, but that's okay. So it goes through a heat exchanger. Okay, it comes out the bottom. So it's going through a heat exchanger. Then it goes through, okay, I'm just making stuff up. Then it goes through a solar collector. Oh, wait a minute. Goes through a solar collector. Sunlight hits it. Heats it up, but it never really turns into a vapor. And it goes through, I know what it'll do. You go through a swimming pool over here. And there's your water. This is ugly. This is really an ugly looking problem. And here's the pipe that pulls the water out. So none of this is to scale. So here's your swimming pool. This is an awful looking problem. So what we'll say is our K loss is equal to 30 here. K loss here is equal to 10. And all the elbows, everything else, all the elbows and fixtures and valves is another 10. Right now, let's just leave that extra. That's good enough. Here, we don't want too much loss. We'll say that's a 10 and this is like a 5. How about that? Or a 2. How about that? Did anything come up yet? Ooh, wait a minute. Okay, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. But actually, that one is what I'm looking for. Can I just copy it? Ooh, I can't. Okay, so I just do a copy, and I'll just drop this on the page. Maybe. Maybe not. Oh, there it is. So as it turns out, there are equations that, okay, so the way this happened is in history in the 20s, 30s, maybe even before that, they went around and started creating the Moody diagram. Back at that time in history, there was a lot of charts. You'd read stuff off charts. You'd get approximations. You would calculate, usually using rough math, or they didn't even have calculators. So there was slide rules, things like that. They didn't have computers. So these charts came up, and they were kind of they were the thing there. You had a Moody diagram with the laminar part, and then you all these curves up. So it turns out somewhere in about the 80s or 90s, and it's continued for like 10, 20 years, people were saying, hey, let's take this thing. Now, you got the Colebrook formula. The problem with the Colebrook formula is if you look back at, let's see. The problem with the Colebrook formula, I think I saw it in this thing. Oh, no. Okay, hang on. Give me a second. Give it a second. Go back to the Colebrook formula. It looks like that. The problem with that is your friction factor sits over here and it sits over there. So you can't directly solve this for the friction factor because you got a logarithm right here and the friction factor sits inside that. So this was the early formula for it. And, turned out it was okay until somebody realized, that's great for putting in a publication, this upper equation, but for use, it's not that good. So people were starting to let's figure out how to make this equation so that the friction factor by itself is on the left side, the E over D and the Reynolds number is on the right side. And so let's zoom in of that, but the formula itself is that. For some reason, the divide by line is missing. You'll find this in many different forms. In other words, you'll see a slight change here, a slight change here and here. And for some reason, I've always seen the 3.7. But, since it's a logarithm, there's some weird things that can happen here. So what we want to do, I want to use this instead of the Moody diagram. And so I want to do a problem here. Let's say we had 2,000 foot of 2-inch pipe with E over D of about 0.005. Let's just say that's what we had an E over D of. 2,000 foot of pipe like that that's covering all that. We have some losses in this heat exchanger, and we had some losses here, and that's the total losses on everything. But we're going to just say for a minute, the head of the pump is going to be 150 or maybe 300 feet. Now, what does that mean? And what we'll do is do this, and we'll back this out in an interesting way. So this is a situation where it's a closed loop. So I can start here, go all the way around and back to here. So I can start at one location, V1 squared over 2G, plus the head of the pump, the supplied energy, minus the losses. And I return back to the same location because I actually am pumping it in a circle. So this is pretty straightforward. It just ends up being the head of the pump is equal to the losses. So in this particular case, we're just going to specify the head of that pump is 300 feet. So it would elevate, well, we're going to say this is liquid, so it'll elevate things 300. It's like there's a 300-foot elevation up there. It's like the water is 300 foot high on a tower or something. So that's essentially it. It's the same thing as pumping the water up to 300 foot and using that to push the water out of the system. So then the losses, you got two types of losses, F, L over D, V squared over 2G. This is what are generally called the pipe losses. And then you got equal to or added to that the sum of all the what are called the minor losses. Now, I don't know exactly why it's called that, because sometimes the numerical value of this is much larger than that. So I think the minor losses don't have anything to do with the amplitude of the losses. They could be the major part of this, but they had to name it something, and so I don't know why they named it minor. You might read the text and find out why. I've read it years and years ago, and I've never found that what I considered an adequate description of why it was called that. So some of the things we've got here. Length of pipe was 2,000 feet. Sum of all the KLs, well, I had a 10 and a 2, so it's like 12. That's okay. And then I get a diameter of 2 12s, 2 inches of pipe. Of course, I got G is equal to 32.2. And so I can take this equation, and here, I'll just move this to the side. I'll take this equation, get rid of some of these descriptors here, and then just write it down here. I'll just say F, the length of pipe was 2,000 feet long, the total length of it. The diameter was 2 over 12. That's how the diameter is. V squared, which we don't know, 2 times 32.2, which Yeah, that's the G down here, and then add up these 12. B squared over 2 times 32.2. And you can sort of see real quick that, that's weird. See, this, I'm going to have to switch to my other, I might start bringing the other one because this one's so slow now. So you end up with the velocity equal to 300, and that's what's sitting right up here, times 2 times 32.2, all this over, and what I'm seeing is these are common to both, over, I'll say it like this, 12 plus 2,000 over 212 times f, and take the square root of it. So what I'm about to do, I think that's my version of MATLAB. Let me get rid of this thing. That may be why part of it's being occupied too, the computational slices of it. Okay. Oh, I said it was 2-inch pipe. I just made that part up. So that was the diameter, the L over D. So there's that makes sense. I could make it a bigger pipe, but I wanted it to not go very fast. I thought I hit that thing. Okay, let me try it again. This thing has really gotten slow. I have a much newer one than this that's bigger, so I guess I'm going to start using it. This one has just gotten... I don't suppose that... How? It's already up, isn't it? You know what? I think maybe I just need to get rid of anything and everything. Okay. Do I need any of this anymore? Did that ever come up? Uh-oh. I got 2 octaves coming up. Wow, it took that long to come up. You know what? Yeah. Let me get rid of that. And let's see, there's an octave. And then there's another octave. I'm kind of scared to... I'm going to take one of them out. Wow. Okay. No. Then I got a third one that showed up. Okay, because didn't I take one of them out? Get rid of that one. Do I get to keep this other one? All right, I got down to 1. All right. All right, so this is the same thing as MATLAB, except it's not MATLAB. It's the octave thing. Did y'all ever play with that? I hate to bring it up, so because yeah, that's all it is, and it works really well. I mean, I got to the point where I paid for a MATLAB version. I don't even install it. I just use this one. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this equation in combination with this other one. So, and I'm going to make it outlandish. Okay, so here's my equation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by guessing a friction factor of 10. And what's funny is you'll never find a friction factor of 10 on that chart. So this is crazy. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over to here, and I'm going to use this variable. F is equal to 10. Okay. Now one of the things I'll be able to do is use the up arrow key to cycle back through my calculations here. Now my next calculation is going to be, I'm going to find the velocity equal to the square root of 300 times 2, times 32.2, divided by 12 plus the friction factor times 2,000 times 12 divided by 2, close and close. So I get a value of that. So there's my V. So then, you know what? I wonder if I could increase that. Make that bigger. How do you make that bigger? Settings, news, help, and edit preferences. Maybe that's it. Oh man, I wish I'd never done that. That may take 5 minutes for that to come out. Oh my God. Oh my God. Now this is my fault. I can blame the university for not supplying certain things, but this might be kind of my fault because I have too slow of a computer. Okay, now how do I do, is it editor? General, maybe general. I don't know how to get this off that. Oh, there we go. You see anything that has to do with the text size? I don't see anything to do with the command. Maybe the command. Font size. Let's do apply. Nothing happened. Oh, is it? Oh, yeah. There's the circle. I just thought I'd make it a little bigger and easier to see. Having to go out and search. What is 18 equal to? Did it change it? Did it make it bigger? Oh, wow, there it is. Okay. Yeah, no, we like that. This way I don't have to write on the page as much. So then I have the V. The first thing I gotta do is I gotta do the Reynolds number. Reynolds number is equal to rho, which for water is 1.94, times the velocity, times the diameter, which was 2 divided by 12, has to be in feet, divided by mu, which for water is 2.34 e to the minus 5. So I got my Reynolds number. Not very high. But the next thing I need to do the E over D. So I'll do it that way. E over D, and I said it was 0.005. And now I'm going to do my friction factor equal to, but I'm going to go back and find this equation right here. And I'm going to use that equation in here. See if I can do this. Friction factor is equal to 1.325 divided by. Now this I'll have to put a bracket. LOG is logarithm in here. LOG 10 is log base 10. So if I do LOG of 1 of e to the 1, I get 1. If I do log 10 of e to the, what might I do to e to the 1? I could just do to the e. I don't get that. But if I do log 10 of 10, I get 1. So log here is just logarithm. So of log, natural log. F is equal to 1.325 divided by. Now this I got to square it, so I'm going to go ahead and square it. But in here, I'm going to do log, and now I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to go ahead and put that in there, so I make sure I keep up with myself. So E over D divided by 3.7. So I'm doing that first term, plus 5.74 divided by Reynolds number brought up to the 0.9 power. And so immediately I guessed 10, and I immediately get something very reasonable. So remember that the F friction factor went from fairly low, but I think it went up to about 0.4. It didn't go to 10. There's no way it'll ever get to 10. I mean, I guess you could get it to 10 by having an awfully draggy thing in there. So that's my friction factor. Now with that friction factor, I can arrow up until I go find my velocity. Remember, the first thing I did is I just guessed a friction factor. Then I went in and calculated the velocity. So now I've gone to about a value of 6. Now I need the Reynolds number. And so I have that velocity as a variable. Then we got a Reynolds number, so we moved up to 83. Now I go back to this equation, and I get a friction factor, 0.03. Now I can go do this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And I can just iterate. And pretty soon, you find 7.0298. Oh, goof. I goofed up there. I had to do that. I hit too many or something. So here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And so at this point, you're pretty much done. So what's weird, I can guess something outlandish. Okay, let me make sure. I'll put my fingers in line so I guess a friction factor of 2,000, and then I calculated the velocity. Friction factor. Immediately it brought it back into line. And okay. You know what? I goofed there. I should have. Okay, wait a minute. Let me guess my outlandish one. Find my velocity with the outlandish. Now I go find the Reynolds number. Now I go back, find the friction factor. 1, 2, 3. Go from the friction factor to velocity. Velocity to Reynolds number. Reynolds number to friction factor. And so you start seeing the last friction factor was this 0.1. This one's 0.03. That first one was just outside of reality. I guessed something so stupid that, so I started by guessing 2,000. Then I get back 0.1 and then 0.03. Now I can do 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So this time 0.03. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Sometimes you got to watch your fingers that you don't go. So now yeah. And then what's funny is in this whole process, there's going to be inherent error in there anyway, because what they don't tell you, and this is something that really annoys me in general, and people, this is a people kind of thing. Oh God, if I do this, I'm going to bring that back up. Well, maybe it was a mistake to do that. But anyway, yeah, I'll tell you what. We'll just give up on that. So people go and give you the Moody diagram, right? And the Moody diagram is what they use to create this equation. When they ran the experiment, they have these beautiful curves, right? But when they're running the experiment, they don't fall on that line. They're all over the place. But they kind of follow that line. And so, in other words, if you just kind of get close within a reasonable amount, going through 100 iterations is kind of crazy. At this point, I see a velocity of 6.97. I'd just say, okay, it's 7. That's it. I'm not going to, going in and saying it's 7.0284 in a setting that's a business setting. That's kind of crazy to add that many decimal spots. So in practice, you get kind of close and you realize, hey, it's about 7. Somewhere it should be about 7. Sometimes you may come up and it might be 8, or maybe it's, 6 or something. There's something else in there, something else that's supplying some losses. So when you're going out and doing these things, getting an ultimately high amount of accuracy is a little bit crazy. So there's something else in here too, and this is where I wanted to go with this, but I don't know that I'm going to get there. But here's the funny thing. So you end up with this, right? So we just came in. This is the first thing you're introduced to when it comes to pump. They say, well, the pump supplies 300 foot ahead. It's equivalent to, the pump is equal to a water tower that's 300 foot high. But it turns out pumps don't behave that way. Water towers do. For example, if you take a pump, so this is just the pump. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to increase it. So this is just the pump. And then what you're saying is I'll put a flow rate out here, and I'll say the head. So this is 300 is saying that this is what you're going to get, no matter how fast the flow rate is or how slow it is. Now, a pump won't do that. A water tower actually will, but that's why you want to put the water up in the tower and let it sit there, is because, first of all, if all the electricity goes off, you still get water. The second thing is, it's 300 no matter what. A pump, on the other hand, does this. It says, okay, I reached the point I can't produce anymore. So think about it like this. This is what a pump will actually behave like. So at a certain flow rate, I'm going to say 1 cubic foot per second. It'll drop down and say it'll stall out. So here's what you're doing. You take your pump. Okay, this is a bad looking pump. So you take your pump out there and you let it squirt out on the ground. And so you have this pool of water back here. You turn on your pump and it's squirting like crazy. Okay, well, that's not anything holding it back. That's the most you can get out of this thing. We'll just say that it's that. So in fact, the head can be looked at as being proportional to the delta P across the pump. That was the pressure from here to here. So there's nothing holding that thing back. You turn on the motor, the pump in there, the most you can get is 1 cubic feet per second out of it. So the delta P across the pump is essentially almost zero. Maybe there's a little bit. Then what you do is you stick a little piece of pipe on there and you put a valve. You put one of those valves that gives you no losses when it's completely open. And you close the thing. And what you do is you put a pressure meter right here. And suddenly you close that thing off and turn on the pump and it goes up to 300. And that's where it's at. So that's 300 foot of water. So it's essentially, if it's closing it off, it can push up to 300 foot, but it can't push to 301. It can't push to 302. So that's the maximum. And then what happens, you open the valve. And as you open the valve, you start tracing out this curve like this. It turns out this is exactly the same thing that a battery. You take a 12-volt car battery. Okay, these are the leads. And you go out there and you clip a lead to this, and you clip a lead to that. And suddenly you've just put a huge amount of current through there. But what you did is you took the voltage and you dropped the voltage across that to a very low voltage. So what you have here, delta V an I. So what you got here, constant current, and then you got this other one that's constant voltage. And so the constant voltage says, you know, no matter what current I draw through this thing, it's going to maintain 12 volts, eh? But in fact, the battery behaves like this. You know, you can get a constant curve. Almost, sometimes you can't get that to be a natural battery. You can't get that vertical. There's nothing you can do to get that. So in fact, the pump and the battery behave the same way. So then how do you model that? And it turns out one of the most common models is something like this. Q, or I'm sorry, head of the pump. Here, I'll do it above it. The head of the pump is equal to some C, call it C naught, minus C1 Q squared. So if you're going to close this off, this is going to be your maximum head on the pump. And then this C1, you're going to have to kind of trace this out. So if you had a pump like this, like what we had, your head may end up being 300 minus, say, I'm just going to make this part up. You'll have to trace this out. Say 20 times Q squared. So this is what pumps curves look like. You'll see this. Okay, I'm going to take a risk again. Yeah, this is my laptop's fault. There's too much. You know what? Well, I still might need Octave. Okay, let's see. Let me get rid of everything down to the last one. And I'll just get to that. Okay, so here's what I want to do. Pump curves. Only one browser thing up. So which one do I like the best? Guess the first one looks fine to me. Did I hit it? Oh yeah, it says waiting for. Waiting, waiting, waiting. Keep those doggies waiting. It came up over here. Click that. Oh man. Where did it? Oh, here it is. So in other words, you can almost, okay, so the way he's got this thing, so this is probably a centrifugal pump. So 7-inch diameter looks kind of like that one. The 7.5 looks like that one. Okay, go away. So he says gallons per minute. You can change that to cubic feet per second pretty easy. So what you see is a drop, just a standard drop. This is very standard. You might get some weird looking ones, but generally for the most part, it's not that much different than this. Okay, so you go in here, and so let's say you had, so you could go in here and say, okay, I got a pump that'll maximum will be 300 foot ahead. So maybe it would be this, and the drop would basically take it down like this. So generally, it's a drop, it has a constant, and a Q squared. This is one of the few times that reality is much easier than fiction. Because if you model your pump like this, take a look at what happens to your equation. Okay, so here's the equation. Instead of just putting in that with 300 feet, what you do is you put in 300 minus whatever value you found this to be times Q squared. And you're looking at this and you're like, well, this is a real life situation. So how do I change this? Well, knowing that Q is equal to AV, you do is you put a Q squared and you put an A squared down here. And suddenly, just like that, you've got a real pump curve and you got a system in there. And you're going to end up solving for Q. And I guess we got 5 more minutes, but I guess maybe we'll pick that up next time. And what we'll do is we'll go in and actually I'll show you how to get your constants off of here. We'll go to Granger. I'll bring the other laptop. This thing's too slow. We'll go to Granger's. I'll pick an actual pump. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll pick a pump. We'll make it go out a little 1-inch PVC pipe to a sprinkler. One single sprinkler. And what we'll do is find out how much water is going to come out of that sprinkler. So we'll attach the pump, like a golf course. You attach it, when you're watering a golf course, they're not going to be really using city water. They're going to have all these little lakes around, and there's going to be little huts out there where they have huts that you can go drink water in. They have huts you can go to the bathroom, and there's also little huts that have pumps that'll turn on and pull the water out of there and sprinkle the lawn. And then what happens is, if they do it in early enough morning, it doesn't evaporate much. It goes back into the water. It'll go back into that little lake. Unless you're in Arizona or something, I have no idea what they do up there. They've got to be using their own. So anyway, what we'll do is we'll take a real pump. We'll send it through, 3/4-inch PVC pipe, 100 yards to the green. And we'll look at a discharge thing for Rainbird, the sprinkler that squirts out, We'll look at that. We'll make it simple. Just PVC pipe, a sprinkler head, and a pump. We'll size our pump. We'll just pick a pump. We'll get the curve off of it. We'll get the discharge coefficient for the sprinkler head up here, and we'll do our pipe, and we'll see what we can, see what the flow rate's going to be. And then maybe what we'll do is we'll pick another pump that's outrageous. We'll pick a reasonable pump, and then we'll pick a 500 horsepower pump and just do something stupid and see what happens. And so we'll try to make it kind of real like that. Granger's has all these. They do not have, and I'm kind of hesitant to go out there because it may take 30 minutes. A lot of them do not supply the pump curve, but there is enough data in the specs to get the pump curve out. And I'll show you some of that. Yeah, they'll usually give you the max, and sometimes they won't, but what they'll do is they'll give you something like flow rate at a certain head. And so what they will generally do, it's kind of weird. If you look at what they're doing, they will actually give you a couple of points on that curve. So they'll tell you flow rate, and they'll tell you flow rate here in the head, and then they'll tell you flow rate in here. What you'll find is they often don't exactly fit a quadratic, and you're free to work extra hard, but what you'll find out is if you just sort of slide a quadratic in there, you'll find out the next pump might be way over here. And so it's pretty easy to just say, okay, I'm just going to get an approximation here,